Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report. In case you're just joining us, this is The Conversation. The Kenya-UK relations with Professor Peter Kagwanja is still right here in studio. So, Prof, even as we look at the modern-day monarchy, of course, that has been their tradition for decades, for centuries. Is Kenya then preparing itself, even as the UK, as you say, it's not a matter of, Kenya needing the UK or the UK needing it is more of a symbiotic relationship. Are we angling towards a place and a situation where we can say, fine, we're at a place that we can have a fair deal, a fair share?
Now, I want Kenyans to look at it this way. If it is the British Prime Minister who is visiting, I would not be talking the way I'm talking. Because with the British Prime Minister, as the head of government, we'll be talking about trade, about smoothening our relationship in terms of the exchange of students, the nuts and bolts, of international business, the exchange, how we are dealing with Ukraine together, because those are practical matters. Because that's what the Prime Minister is about. He's the head of government and he's running day-to-day business of the government. The Queen and the King have absolutely no business. They're ceremonial. And therefore, they carry the whole burden of the British history. They carry the whole burden of the British, monarchy, which is thousands of years old. And therefore, in that regard, the question that the King and the Queen must respond to is historical. So it's not that we are irrelevant. We don't know that trade matters, or we don't know that our relationship with Britain and that should be smooth matters. But we are putting it squarely on the person responsible for the historical relics. He himself, the monarchy in Britain itself is a relic of the past, in the sense that the British themselves are moved from the monarchy, the way it was, to what they have today. And this is the monarchy that presided over our colonialism. The mother of the king, Queen Elizabeth II, became queen in 1952, around the same time when the state of emergency was declared, when they got Jomo Kenyatta and other fighters and killed thousands of Kenyans who tried to struggle for their independence. And this is the history that we are putting before the king. Remember, the king is not the head of government. He's just the titular figurehead of the island of Britain, those islands. But what it is that we want to smoothen, the king can clear the path, remove all the relics on the way, then let's talk business as equals in terms of that. That's really the context that we need to put together, that I would not spend my time telling the Prime Minister of Britain to apologize to us for what? He himself came from India, or his ancestors came from India. He's also, a symbol of how integrated the world is, and how global the world is becoming. But when you have the symbol of the past that oppressed you, can only confront it that way. We have nothing against Charles. Charles is is a very liberal person. I've listened to him talk about Rwanda and other countries. He's one of the most liberal monarchs that I have listened to in terms of his thoughts. His love for environment, his attachment to, yes, and even family values. As you can see, he's moving with his wife across the country. He's a respectable gentleman. So you wouldn't individualize it or turn it into personal. But what we are saying is that, yes, Kenya and Britain have a shared past. And that shared past is on the shoulder of the king. Because his mother was there, his father was there, Queen Victoria, the great-grandmother, was also there, in terms of conquering this land. And when they cut off the head of, Koitalel Arap Samoei and took it out as a trophy and have never returned it, who should we ask?
Important questions that you raise. So even as you look at the history that they need to address, there are also other issues that, marry into each other, into the present. And it's among the issues that even the Kenyan Human Rights Commission, KHRC, raised in their press conference yesterday, including conservation, which they call the new face of new colonialism. In the words, or rather in the face of community conservancies, especially in the north. When you look at that whole conversation, because they say that the UK is perpetrating and enabling the progression of these land issues. So I'm looking at that, whereas its benefits have been discussed, and opinion is varied. This issue of land that you even mentioned in the past, how then should it be dealt with?
I think what we were talking about in terms of the atrocities that the Human Rights Commission and other human rights champions are putting onto the table here is that the presence of the British military and the continuation of the defense agreement, which was signed in 1964, its impact has been negative to Kenya. I do know, yes, Kenyans know that in Nanyuki, as they are saying, 4 shillings out of 10 are coming from the coming of the British. I mean, even the mines in South Africa that kills so many people with, tuberculosis and others also bring money. So there is what we call clean money and dirty money. Now, if it is clean money, if it is benefiting the people without adverse consequences, Batuk, that is British Army Training Unit in Kenya, has several aspects to it. First, it is the only place where Liu war takes place in a Liu situation. In other words, it's the closest you get to a war situation. Therefore, they use live ammunitions and use grenades and bombs and all those kind of things. Then, sometimes carelessly, they are left there. And we have many Kenyans who have lost their limbs and their arms and compensation not there. Two, some of the chemicals that come from those ammunitions are harmful to human beings, and therefore we have people suffering from different kind of effects health-wise. And then they have nobody to turn to. And we do also have what you can call environmental impact of some of these issues. Not to talk about now the human impact of interaction. The lady who was killed and dumped and was never found until 3 months later, and so on and so forth. And that's not the only one. There are strings of cases. What does that mean? It means that we need to begin to revise. When they were doing that, when that area, the population was small, that was okay. But now the population has increased. The Samburu people, the Kikuyu people, and Maasai people, all those people who are staying there have now increased. And therefore, do we need to look at the terms of engagement in terms of the defense pact? Maybe we do. So that we now begin to take care of the human needs of the people are there. It is not a wholesale advocacy that the British military should just go back to the sea or whatever they are saying, move out of country and so on. I mean, we still need our relationship with the Britain in terms of defense. Our military benefits immensely from the training by their counterparts and so on. So this is important. But as we entrench our freedom, as we entrench our human rights, as we entrench our dignity as equal human beings with the British, it is important to emphasize that we need engagement that do not hurt us. And engagements that are hurting us are not good. Stating that is not being a radical. It is not radical. It is being fair. And listening to that should not make you angry, right? Or should not make you call other people's names that look at this Kenyan militant, these radicals, these angry. No, we're not angry Kenyans. We respect ourselves. We're simply saying it is possible for Kenya 60 years on, and for Britain 6 years after colonialism, to adjust and align our relationship as a relationship of equals. And we iron out some of the things that are happening. If a British citizen kill a Kenyan, whether in Nanyuki or in Nairobi, they should be treated as criminals, not diplomatic niceties coming in, you cannot try a British here. What you killed is a Kenyan. What you ended is a Kenyan life. And the fact that you ended thousands of Kenyan lives in the past, now that comes alive.
Yeah.
But our shared history should also be seen as something that we can treasure. That's why it is us, by the way. Yes. It's Kenyans who invited the King Charles III and Queen Camilla to Kenya. Yes. It's the leader we have elected ourselves, William Ruto, who penned the invite. Yes. So they are not coming as illegal people, they are our guests. They're honoring an invitation. Yes, they're honoring an invitation, and we have we should have the courtesy to welcome them cordially into this country. And King Charles, wherever you are, and Queen Camilla, welcome to Kenya. This beautiful land. Absolutely. Yes. And do you think that perhaps they needed to enhance or expand the places they are going to visit? They are going to visit Nairobi, the capital, and then later to Mombasa. Based on what you're saying, addressing the past, would it have been a symbol or a sign if they visited, perhaps central Kenya, or even the places such as the origin of Koitalel Arab Samoei? Would it have made more significance and more importance? History between us and Britain is still being contested. Okay. I was listening to one of the presentations online at the University of Nairobi by a British talking about the Koitalel Arab Samoei. And if you listen to that revisionist history, they're still unapologetic. They're treating us as, instruments of analysis. Like in Namibia, they talk about a lady called Batman, where she was, moved from one museum to another for people to measure her gifts from God, that according to them, this is the biggest they have ever seen. And then she was moved like a trophy, and finally she died. And the Namibians have been asking for her remains and so on and so forth. Yeah. But the point is, 60 years on, we still have those relics. And as a result, it is important for Britain and Kenya to confront that history. Yes. Now, I think Kenyans are ready to get an apology. I think that's what Mother Karua and others were saying, that we need an unequivocal apology. We've not said after the apology we'll come after you. No. Kenyans just want us to settle that history and move on. And that's what the former mayor, the councillor, was saying, that we need to move on. But Britain is not allowing us to move on. Because every time they come, it's a regret. It was bad. In those very unsubtle kind of comment. You want to say the Mau Mau face, 1952 to 1962 was a horrific face. Stated categorically, without looking at like you are sugarcoating and sanitizing crime. Let me quickly make a joke. Yes. The British are good in two languages. In Tanzania, they had two categories of people. The African was the rat catcher, and the British was a rodent officer. And the use of the term rodent officer, both were catching rats. To avoid plague. But being called a rodent officer enable you to have a higher salary, higher dignity, a different uniform, and all that. And here we have a rat catcher who just comes with short pants and has no office, is just a rat catcher. So language matters. Language matters. Language matters. Do you think then whoever penned the invite, that is President William Ruto, whereas the apology needs to come from the king, as is expected, or rather as is being advocated for, is there a way that even with the president himself, President William Ruto, who has penned the invite, as you said, would then perhaps either in one of the engagements or wherever they're going, perhaps sort of cue or have a position where he would seem to advocate for Kenyan interests? We still have to hear President Ruto's own position on the Mau Mau. Yeah. I'm a historian, and he's a young Kenyan. maybe we still have to hear what he says. For Daniel Moi, it was, I helped the Mau Mau. That's it. He did not say he sympathized with them or whatever, but he helped those Mau Mau who came to his farm and who came to his home and all. And that's it. For many Kenyans, it's a deeply ideological position. Read Odinga's, Not Yet Uhuru, read other biographies by Kenyans, and you find that Mau Mau, not Mau Mau, actually our freedom struggle, from even before the Mau Mau, Hareth Huku, and so on, were there. But what has happened is a consistent debate within history that started in the 1950s, that the Mau Mau, or the freedom struggle in Kenya as a whole, was by a people who don't want civilization, and two, that they are anti-white, and therefore they might be isolated. Then it came to the 1950s when that this is not just a Mau Mau, these are the Mount Kenya, the Kikuyus. So it's about the Kikuyus. And the rest of Kenyans are good. So the divide and rule and the divide and conquer aspect has kept us divided on our national question. And what does